Our power is in our voice. Our power, it's in our thoughts. Our power is in our actions. Our power, it's already innate in who we are. We are the earth. We are the sky. We are the trees. We are our ancestors. We are the future generations. We are all that is.
El mundo no quiere ser cambiado. El mundo quiere seguir igual como está. A la gente ya trae como un carril y es como un tren y ya tiene inercia. Solo aquellos que ya no quieren estar ahí es que buscan algo alternativo. No para estar en contra de unas ciudades, sino para tener una alternativa a las ciudades. Más que vamos a cambiar el mundo, vamos a cambiar nuestro mundo.
The People's Reset is a gathering of freedom-minded people, communities, freedom families, coming together to learn from each other what are the different solutions out there to what we see are very common issues and problems.
When we first started, we were responding or reacting to the World Economic Forum announcing the Great Reset. And after we did that from 2021 to 2024, we decided it was time to kind of rebrand and focus more on us, the people, what we can do for ourselves. What is the world we want for 2030, for the future, for the coming generations? And so we decided, let's just call it the People's Reset.
Yo creo que hay muchas personas que necesitan escuchar lo que estamos diciendo aquí.
If you're the kind of person that wants to make the world a better place, the People's Reset is definitely a good place to start.
I think the People's Reset is a gathering for people who are problem aware, but solution oriented.
They want to expand and flourish. It's like you are riding a wave of awakening together with other people who are in the same page as you.
My heart brings me here. My wanting to participate in something greater, on this transformation where all these beautiful hearts and amazing minds are gathering.
So the People's Reset, it's a 5-day event, and every single day is one single theme. The first day is liberate your mind, body, and soul, and that's for us, it's health. So that's mental health, spiritual health, physical health. The second day is about permaculture, growing food. Third day is all about the parallel system. The fourth day is about technology, digital technology, as well as health technology. The final day is about building free and conscious communities. And what I love about it is that each of the speakers we invite, they interpret that in their own way.
People from around the world are coming to share their knowledge, information, and ideas about, I would call it, new systems.
Where the purpose is to understand different ways of building new societies and exiting the old system so that we can get to that future we want to.
That's why it's so important to come to these conferences, because people with the skills and information that are helping us to see those aspects on how we can do certain things, like you can see a lot more when you have this range of teachings that allows you to have a true freedom.
Para mí, The People's Reset es sobre autonomía, tomar conciencia de nuestra posición en la sociedad y no depender exclusivamente del gobierno, sino saber que tenemos las herramientas y la inteligencia para podernos autogestionar.
Most people feel frustrated with where they're at with respect to how their governments are run, how the systems are run. We all feel that the systems are basically corrupt.
When the system fails us, we recognize that we don't want to be a part of the system.
That people are hungry for this. And people right now are looking for people to follow so they can actually learn certain ways forward, whether it's in their health, their technology or economics, whatever area they're looking to get greater freedom or empowerment in. By hosting these events, people can then plug into different ideas, and there was a real thirst for that. And frankly, after the last few years, all the doom mongering, people were like, wow, there is optimism in the world, there is hope.
But more than anything, I think the best way is to let people know that this is possible and that this is an option, is to live it and connect in a very respectful, kind and loving and understanding manner.
The people are interested in taking charge of their own health and livelihood.
When people have mind and heart coherence and they come together, great things can happen.
Necesitamos activar a las comunidades para que participen y se den cuenta de que pueden ser factores de cambio importante, no una solución.
And doing it together, which is more important than ever right now, to remember that we're not alone.
Woohoo! I don't know about you guys, but every time I watch that thing gets me pumped up. That was the official after movie made by our team, We Are Not Zombies, this amazing team of activists and creatives based in Mexico City. Thank you guys for being here. Welcome to Microactivation number 3. Please let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. We've got a packed microactivation today. Let's go ahead and start off the way we usually do. I see some of you are already doing it. Let us know where you are tuned in right now. I see Wisconsin, Central Texas, Yucatan, Mexico, San Diego, Colorado. I saw Bosnia earlier, very cool. From the foothills of the Catskills Mountains, very cool. North Carolina. Let us know where you're tuned in today, guys. We got community, family all around the world. And of course, we are live right now on Crowdcast and on Odyssey. So thanks to everybody who's over there watching on Odyssey. If you want to comment, let us know where you're tuned in from. We'd love to hear from you. Let's get to some housekeeping items before we get to today's focus. Let us know where you're from. If you're on Crowdcast and you're new to the platform, on your right, it'll probably be on your right side of the screen, you're going to notice a few options. There's a Q&A box, question mark. If you have specific questions today for me or for our other speakers, please do put the questions there so we can make sure to catch them, because they'll kind of get lost in the main chat. The other thing is we have a poll. If you look on the right side again, there's a poll. Let me go ahead and make that live. Our poll today is all about our theme today. Today's theme is Agorism and Parallel Networks. We'll talk more about what that means in a moment. But the question is, what ways are you participating in parallel or alternative systems? And I gave a few examples: growing food, permaculture, homeschooling, unschooling, open source technology, or something else. And if there's something else that fits in there, go ahead and share it in the chat and let us know what you are focused on. So yeah, we got California, Yosemite, New Jersey, Virginia, Appalachian Mountains, UK, Oregon. Yes, I love seeing this. Thank you guys. Keep them coming. And I am, of course, here in Morelia, Mexico, where we are going to be hosting the People's Reset in just, I can't believe it, less than 3 months. November 12th. So we got December, January. Really, it's two and a half months already. Coming up January 28th to February 1st. And it's getting busy over here. I'll say that. We are working hard night and day over here, myself and Miriam and our small, humble team, to give you guys the best event. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. This is our website. If you haven't been here for a while, go check out the peoplesreset.org. We've got some updates. I want to tell you about them real quick before we get into today's microactivation. Just this week, we announced the official Freedom Families. You see the Freedom Families on the banner there on the navigation. The Freedom Families Project for 2026. This is being hosted by our friend Lainey Liberty, who, if you've been on the last microactivations, you heard Lainey talk about this. We are trying to make our event more welcoming and open for families. And this is something we've always done, but we realize we can improve. And so we're doing more this year. Last year we had kind of an art room where the young kids could make art and play. And then we had a few different meetups and things related to that. What we're trying to do now is develop programming specifically for families. And in this video right here, you can go ahead and check it out later. Maybe I'll play it today, but you can go ahead and watch it on the website. Lainey just explains what she's doing here. So we're looking for families. Of course, the People's Reset is completely free for all kids 14 and under. So if your kids are 14 and below, they can come in for free. So that's one way we're trying to offer families, a little bit of a discount. But also, Lainey's going to be hosting 2 specific workshops, which will be announced in the coming months, more details. One is called The Conscious Family, Integrating Tools for Mental Health. The other one's about adapting a partnership, parenting, and self-directed learning mindset. So those are going to be really, I think, useful. But what we want right now is if you are planning on coming, you can fill out this form that we have on the website, and this will help us get a better idea of what type of content to create. This isn't a babysitting service where Lainey's just going to watch your kids. What we're trying to do is, whether we do another art room or we have specific workshops for the kids, we want to know the age ranges. We want to know what their interests are. So just please, if you are coming and you have kids coming with you or you're thinking about bringing them, go ahead and fill out that form on the Freedom Families page. It'll allow us to get a better idea of what type of content we should do, workshops, play shops, things of that sort. So that's all right there on the navigation, Freedom Families. And then the other thing I want to mention, you go to the speakers tab. We have officially released all of the speakers for the People's Reset, including just adding a new one just this week, where we now have a representative of the cryptocurrency Zano, which we'll be talking about technology in 2 weeks at our next microactivation. But if you go through here, this is the complete lineup. Unless somebody drops out and some changes are made, which sometimes does happen. This is the final lineup, and you can see all of the speakers and all the performers who are going to be involved in the People's Reset. I think this is going to be one of the best lineups we've had. And one of the things I always try to emphasize is, as you look through this lineup, you might not recognize the names of all the people here. And that's because the People's Reset, we don't really aim to just get the big names, people with millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers. We look for people who are actually focused on solutions. And sometimes those people don't have huge followings. We do have some people on here who are well known, Alex Zek, Carrie Wedler, and many others in here who have a nice following behind their work. But again, a lot of the people who are doing great work in permaculture or building parallel systems or technology or building communities, you've never heard of them because they're quietly doing the good work and they might not have much of a social media presence. So I encourage you to go through here, click on the speaker profiles, get to know their histories, get to know their websites, follow them if you can, and check them out, and just start to get familiar with them as you get excited for what's to come in January, because all of these speakers, I think, are really going to be offering something very special, very unique, and I can't wait to share that with you guys. So one other thing I will mention is, as always, we are going to be offering a 10% discount on tickets exclusively for those who are tuned in today at this microactivation. So 10% discount off tickets. Tickets went up to $222 on November 1st. And I'll tell you guys this, they are going to go up one more time, final time, starting on December 1st to $288. And that's going to be the final price for this year for the People's Reset 2026. And for us, we think that's still a great value. Even at $288, it's below $300. And if you go around and check any similar events in Mexico, we are confident we are the most affordable, most solutions-focused event available in all of 2026. But for those who are tuned in today, at the end of this program, I will be giving you the code. And if you want to buy your tickets over the next 48 hours, you'll have 48 hours to use this 10% discount code and to get 10% off the current price of $222. So, all right, I think that's all of the housekeeping items. Let me go ahead and set the stage for today's theme. Today's focused on agorism and parallel networks. And agorism, as for those who've been following, you've heard me talk about this, or you've heard us talk about this at the event. But really briefly, it is a philosophy, it's a strategy outlined by a Canadian man named Samuel Edward Konkin III, who was born in Canada and spent most of his life in the United States, went to Wisconsin University in the 60s, was very active in the 1960s student movements and protests, and he was an anarchist. And like many people at that time, he started to see that politics wasn't going to serve us and lead to this better world we're all after. And he also didn't think violence was going to be the way to achieve it. And he also didn't believe that apathy and just giving up was the answer. So he started to do some research and to study various movements, particularly the Soviet Union and other parts of the world where the government had got pretty totalitarian and authoritarian and aggressive. And he started to notice that as the governments get more aggressive, the people, we tend to react and we respond. And so let's say the state starts to clamp down on what you can buy and what you can sell and what you can do with your life. Many people will comply, but also a great portion of the people will find ways to circumvent those things and to work around them. And so he started to realize that, for example, in the Soviet Union, as they clamped down and as they got more strict, the black market, the gray market, which is essentially just people doing business outside of the government's hands. He called the mainstream economy, which most of us exist in, the white market, and the black market would be doing things that the government considers illegal, and the gray market would be doing things that the government would prefer you to have a license for, but you just do it anyway. So let's say you're supposed to get a license to cut hair, but you cut your neighbor's hair anyways. Oh my God, the world's going to end. And you do it anyways. That's the gray market, right? And so Konkin noticed that the gray market seemed to pop up. The gray and the black market seemed to pop up and become very active whenever the state was getting more and more aggressive. And his sort of, I think, great insight was that what if we, instead of just having those gray and black markets there being a consequence of oppression from the state, what if we as free-thinking, forward-thinking, conscious people said, let's move our money and our time and our energy into the gray and the black market, outside of the white market, outside of the state's hands, and instead focus on building what he called the counter economy. And what we call the parallel economy. I mean, it goes by many names: the underground economy, the parallel economy, the alternative economy, or as Konkin called it, the counter economy. And Konkin wrote a book called The New Libertarian Manifesto in the late 70s, early 80s. And he kind of predicted a lot of what we're seeing in the world, as he believed that society would pass through different stages. The government would get more aggressive. People would seek to use technology. He was witnessing the early birth of the very early stages of computers, and he could see that computers were going to be useful. And he even, in some ways, predicted things like cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see it because he died in 2004, which takes us back to our first theme and the importance of taking care of your health, because he was not a very healthy person. He was very intelligent, but not very healthy. And he died way too young and did not live to see his ideas really come to fruition. So myself and pretty much all of our team in the People's Reset are greatly inspired by Konkin's ideas and agorism, and this idea of moving our time, our money, and our energy into the parallel economy, into the counter economy. And that is largely what the whole People's Reset is all about. We want to build alternative institutions. We don't want to fix things through the government. We don't want to try to overthrow the government. And we definitely don't want to be black-pilled and apathetic and just give up. We want to build the systems that we think represent our values. So we take great inspiration from Samuel Konkin and his ideas of agorism. And while he was highly focused on the economy exclusively, and we do think the economy is absolutely important, where we spend our money and how we make money, but we tend to take that idea and kind of apply it more holistically. Instead of just talking about building a counter economy, let's build counter institutions, parallel institutions, whether that's talking about health, whether that's talking about the way we grow our food, whether that's talking about the way we educate ourselves, in so many different areas. So that's a bit about the theme and what we focus on. Now, what I like about the People's Reset and the way we've evolved over the last 5 years, I don't know if you guys are aware, we started this event in the midst of COVID, late summer, early fall 2020. Myself and John Bush came up with this idea. It was originally called the Greater Reset. And now we've hosted 7 events, 6 in Mexico, 1 in the UK, and this will be our 8th event in Mexico, if you can believe it. And in the beginning, we were very much kind of agorism explicitly, like only focused on agorism. But as the event has evolved and we are reaching more and more people, the way we interpret the theme has also evolved. So today we're talking about agorism and parallel networks, and we're going to have 3 speakers today. First, we're going to hear from Will Keller, and I'll let Will explain what he's going to speak about, but you're going to notice that we're not explicitly talking about agorism. We're each kind of interpreting it in our own ways. Will's going to talk about natural law, and one of the reasons I invited him to speak as part of the People's Reset is because I believe if we're going to build parallel systems, we also have to think about the underlying philosophies with which we build those parallel systems, right? And that is, we can't just do this, can't create new systems and bring the same mindsets. We have to rethink that as well. So Will's going to talk about that. And then we're going to hear from Brother Grant Elman, also known as Presence. And he is going to speak about his thoughts on building parallel forms of making money, parallel economic streams, and I'll let him explain that better. He did send a pre-recorded video because unfortunately for us, but fortunately for him, he is in Germany right now flying to go tour Europe and do some amazing things. So big shout out to him. And then I will actually be the final speaker today, and I'm going to be giving you guys the first preview that I've shared with anybody of my new book, my new memoir about my experience with drug addiction. And that might not seem to tie directly into agorism and parallel systems, but what I believe is that it's time for us to start kind of opening the dialogue about addiction in the freedom community, the truth community, because it's a lot more prevalent than I think people realize around the world, but even in our communities, even in our enlightened communities. And I want to talk about how we can build parallel systems for recovery and for healing that don't just reinforce the AA model or government probation and parole and rehab and all those sort of things, which I personally have been through, and I believe reinforce negative stereotypes for humanity. So we'll get into all that today. So we got a whole lot to get into today, and then we're going to end the show with a song from Presence, so you guys can get a teaser of the music he's going to share. So I hope you guys will really be active. Again, if you have questions for any of our speakers today, please do put them in the appropriate Q&A chat so I can see them. Once we get through all the presentations, we'll do the Q&A. And yeah, I'm excited. So let's go ahead and bring on Brother Will to get us started. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Derrick. Thanks for having me on, and fantastic intro.
Awesome, brother. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and toss it to you. I'll step off stage, and you have it for about 15 minutes, and then I'll see you after that.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, it's a great honor and a privilege to be invited to speak at the People's Reset. This will be my first time visiting the People's Reset event, so I am thrilled to connect with other speakers and everyone that's going. I'm very excited. And the topic that I will be presenting is one that I'm extremely passionate about. It is natural law. Now, some people have heard of natural law. It's actually a category that relates to everything in our existence. It's a vast category. Ultimately, what I'm talking about is the laws of nature, right? The laws of creation, the substrate or the underpinnings, the governing dynamics that govern reality. Most people understand the physical laws, thermodynamics, gravitation. Even modern science recognize these as constants, right? Objective and immutable. But yet there is the unseen realm, the metaphysical realm, which isn't talked about as much. Now we're in the realm of psychology and energy itself. And really, it's the causal realm that dictates what the physical manifestation is how it's going to express. So this is the category that I love. It's perfect for parallel networks, because ultimately we are going to create systems. These systems, although they are alternative or parallel, we don't want to repeat what humans have just learned over and over again without understanding the true causal factors and then evolving from there, right? We want to evolve to a higher level of interaction and community, because in nature, right, everything is based upon relationships. Very important. We're having people in the chat. There's a relationship we're developing right now. My neighbors, my family, my environment, my community, right? We're constantly developing these relationships with not just humans, animals, plant life, the land, the sky, everything. And taking it over to the metaphysical, our relationships with truth, morality, moral principles, philosophies, etc. So everything in nature is based upon relationships. The key is, what is the context and the condition of those relationships? And this is where the understanding, the knowledge, and the activation of natural law, the laws of nature, really shine forward. We're talking about immutable, non-man-made laws, so there's no belief required. They exist, they're in operation eternally, but our perception can come to know this body of information, and we can apply it in our actions and behaviors for a more prosperous community and relationships, right? The goal is symbiosis. Natural law itself it's a teaching mechanism put there by creation, right? For us to come to learn more about how to operate and function and grow within reality and within our relationships with others, but also within ourselves, right? So this is a vital and a vast topic. I definitely focus on the moral aspect of natural law, because what is more basic than the behaviors and the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis and in the aggregate, right, in our communities that we are going to be developing? So that structure, that blueprint, is the foundation that must be understood, and it must be there for the just the substrate of the communities that we are building. You know, if it's health, financial, agriculture, you know, permaculture, everything that we do, we need to understand that morality is always in effect, and natural law and the principles of natural law are also always in effect. So it's a huge topic, and I'm extremely excited about it. I mean, we look at the systems today, right? In all around the world, they are extremely parasitic. They violate humans, animals, the land, the earth, right? On the celestial level, there's a take. So we as human beings, as the custodials of this planet, have an opportunity to step into the slipstream or the rhythm of life, right? That is evolution, with the whole biosphere. And then that's where we can really prosper, and our stewardship to the planet and to ourselves can really shine. And to me, that is evolution, right? Evolution is many factors, right? First and foremost, it's a state of mind, right? And then we can feel that when we're aligning with good, with truth, with what is right. And then we can act accordingly to those thoughts and emotions in a moral capacity. So this is going to be fantastic. I'm excited to dive into this category. And you know, I'm trying not to give too much away. I'm looking at my notes, and I love it. So I'm also going to talk about, you know, what natural law is not. I see when I kind of observe, you know, social media or people commenting and talking about natural law, there's a lot of misdirection and incorrect information. So I want to clear up what natural law is not. First, I'll do the definition. I'm not going to go through all my notes, but it's good to have a starting point, because ultimately this is what we want. We need clarity. Nikola Tesla has a fantastic quote. He said, he was referring to scientists, but this applies to everyone. Most people can think deeply, but not clearly. Now think about that today, because there's so many rabbit holes and there's so much information out there that people can consume, right? I call it information deprivation. People are getting burnt out on the availability of information. But sure, you can go deep down these rabbit holes, but can you think clearly? Natural law is that structure, is that framework by which we can bounce information or filter information through to get and access that clarity, right? So with just the definition of natural law, nature, it is an ancient Egyptian etymology. Commission, it is netcher. You would write that as NTR. This meant creation, right? We look at the natural world, the land, the forces of nature. These are not man-made. This is inherent in this experience, right? So we have natural, you add the all to it, the AL, and that is of, from, or like creation, right? And then the second word is law, which the true and accurate definition of law is a governing dynamic that is unchanging, right? That word law is referring to the laws of nature, not man's law that is based upon perception and whims and changes, between time, place, location, etc. That's not a law. That's a condition. Ultimately, that's what that is. A law is an immutable, non-man-made governing dynamic. So when we put natural and law together, it's very descriptive, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. The objective, non-man-made, immutable governing dynamics of reality, right? And again, like I started, it's such a vast topic, but the moral aspect is fundamental and is critical for us to understand, especially with the parallel systems, right? If we want to, fly a plane, you need to understand natural law. You need to understand principles of aviation, motion, thrust, thermodynamics, etc. All of that. Some of the greatest inventors in history, Victor Schauberger, Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, right? They all have something in common. They observed nature and understood those governing dynamics. And then we can build our systems, our technology upon something that aligns and harmonizes with natural law itself. So nature itself is the ultimate mentor, and we can observe and learn and then apply that to the world and in our relationships that we create as human beings. So again, I'm thrilled to present at the People's Reset in just 2.5 months, like Derrick said, and I appreciate everyone's time and attention.
Awesome. Great job, brother. Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to share what you want to share without giving away your whole talk. So thanks for
Sure.
Sharing a bit there. What's the best place for people to follow your work and keep up with all the things you're up to?
Absolutely. My main website is just willkeller.com. Then you can get to all my presentations, podcast interviews, the One Great Work Network profile, and the Funnel Conference. Everything is on there. So willkeller.com.
Why don't you share about the Funnel Conference real quick before we go to our next speaker?
Yeah, appreciate that. So during the lockdowns of the pandemic, it started as a support group, a Facebook group, and I connected with like-minded individuals in my local area. And then, fast forward to just 2 years of just having a support group meeting every week, we came together as a group and said, you know what, we want to create more together. So we decided to do an online free virtual conference where we brought people that understood natural law or morality and from different categories and did an online conference. So now we have February 22nd will be Funnel 5. So we're on the 5th conference, and I think we're going to share some of your music, and we're looking forward to this. So it's a great example. I love telling the story because just like-minded individuals come together, we unite, and we wanted to create action, and we've done that, and we've had some good success with it. So a lot of great presentations and information on there.
Awesome. Great work you guys are doing. And Funnel stands for Freedom Under Natural Law, right?
Correct. You got it.
Awesome. And by the way, just a note while I'm thinking of it, I found the email from Chris inviting me to be a part of it next year. I would love to be a part of it. You guys can use any of my music, anything. So I'd love to chat about that later.
I love
All right,
it.
brother. I'm going to send you back to the gallery and just hang out for a bit. We'll hear from presents and I'll do mine. And then everybody, again, if you have questions for Will, please do put them in the Q&A chat and we'll bring you back in just a bit, brother.
Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, so that is Will. And if you're paying attention on Crowdcast, and I'll drop the link over on Odyssey as well. Thank you to everybody who's watching on Odyssey. You can check out more about Will on the People's Reset website. There's a link to his profile and all his links there. So definitely check him out. I'm really excited because for me, natural law and voluntarism, I actually gave a presentation about this a couple months ago. I think they go hand in hand and they work really well together. And our event has been subtly about bringing voluntarism and natural law to people's minds, because when the People's Reset first started, it was very much a reaction to COVID and people were like, no, I don't want to get injected and all that sort of stuff. And so we were all coming from different backgrounds, mainly united by what we didn't want, which was to be forcibly injected. But it didn't necessarily mean that we were all on the same philosophical founding and foundation. So we have now, over the last couple of years, started to bring more of that message. And hopefully those who attend the People's Reset really get that. So now we're going to go to our second speaker. As I mentioned before, Grant Elman, also known as Presence, is currently at an airport on the way to finishing up the second part of his tour with Dub FX, the amazing performer who's also going to be performing at the People's Reset. And so Grant did a pre-recorded video for us. So we're going to go ahead and play this. This is about 20 minutes long, I think. And so we'll play the whole thing and then we're going to pause it. He actually did include one of his music videos, but we're going to save that for the end of today's so you guys can get a teaser of his music. So again, Grant is going to share about his ideas on building alternative systems and how to get yourself an alternative income source, which then can help you lead you to the places you want to get to, where getting out of the system. And so I will let him take it away and I'll be back.
Aloha, everybody. Hope you are doing well today. Big up Derrick Broze and Will Keller for joining me on this micro activation. Happy to be here for the People's Reset micro activation on Agorism and Parallel Networks, building parallel systems. And in this video today, I'm just going to do a little walk and talk because I'm actually currently, as you're watching this, going to be flying all the way over to Germany for the last leg of the tour with Dub FX and Mr. Woodnote. And so in this video, I want to talk a little bit about my experience of finding my way to generate passive income. And that way I can free up my time and figure out how to focus my efforts and my energy on things that are fulfilling to me in my life, and having the resources to focus on building these parallel systems and building what feels authentic to my soul on my soul's journey, and not have to feel the financial pressure of needing to show up every day to a 9-to-5 or have somebody else make my schedule. So this video is really about entrepreneurship, and I'm going to share a little bit about my journey. So if you're not familiar with my work, I go by Presence and I make music, and my music is focused on freedom, truth, love, and it's a combination of reggae music and hip-hop and funk and all the genres that have inspired me. And it's heavily infused with a very, I would say, in-your-face kind of message of truth, natural law, and begging people to wake up so that we can create human sovereignty. And as Derrick says in one of his lyrics, create the world that we know is possible. And so around 2018, 2019, I just came off of a really bad ski injury where I broke both of the bones in my leg. And I was broke at the time. I think I didn't have very much money, and I didn't have a job, and I was just kind of being a ski bum, not really taking much personal responsibility for my life, not really working on anything to be of service or provide any value to the world through my gifts. And I think this is really critical. I think every single person on this earth has some kind of value that they're here to share. Everybody has some kind of a gift, a creative gift, and it doesn't matter if you're a musician or a painter or a writer or a business person or somebody who's an athlete or an activist or whatever it might be. I think that everybody has something to share in this grand symphony that we're all playing a part in. And I think a lot of people in this life are very depressed and miserable and disempowered because they know that they have something to offer, but they feel stuck and they don't know how to bring about that gift to the world. You know, a lot of times you'll hear people say things along the lines of, oh, I've always wanted to do this thing, I've always wanted to paint this painting, or I've always wanted to record an album, or I've always wanted to do this thing. And it's like, well, if you've always wanted to do it, then what is stopping us from doing it, right? And I'm not saying that this is the only thing stopping us from doing it, but I think one of the large things is people feel this pressure to have to make some kind of an income because we live in a world where, like it or not, in this reality, we have to pay to be alive. And I think it's possible eventually that we could evolve through agorism and parallel systems and barter and trade and community. I think we could evolve to a point where we don't need money anymore, and we could just create abundance through the synergistic nature of community and things that we can bring to the table. However, that being said, we're currently living in a time where this system still does exist, and we have to walk in two worlds. We have to walk in the world that we want to create, and we also have to walk in the world that currently exists and not spiritually bypass it. And so, in order to free up our time, you know, I think that we're living in a time right now where there's more and more opportunities than ever before to be able to generate an income online without having to have somebody else be your boss. And this is really the spirit of the entrepreneurs. How can you be your own boss? How can you take personal responsibility for your time, for your income? This is something that also another fellow People's Reset speaker, Jason Christoff, talks about a lot, is you don't want to give somebody else the responsibility over your income and your wealth because it could get shut off at any time. You want to be taking personal responsibility for your income. And ideally, having multiple streams of income, multiple streams of passive income, even better, because then you can diversify yourself and be able to insulate yourself from the risk of if one of those streams of income happened to fail for whatever reason. But the first stream of passive income that I figured out how to create is an Airbnb short-term rental property management business. And I started this back in 2019, and at the time I was really broke and I didn't have a job. I'd just gotten out of college and I was very off my path, off my purpose. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I wanted to make music, but I didn't know how I was gonna make an income making music. And I knew that if I just set my mind to it, I figured that I could find a way to create some passive income for myself so that I could free up my time, so then I could focus on making music and doing things that I'm passionate about and having the energy and the resources to invest into myself and in my career and not have to have the pressure of making money off of that in order to survive. And I think that's especially important in my case because I knew that I was going to be telling hard truths through my music and telling people things that they maybe don't want to hear. And as we've seen through the last several years of censorship, I know Derrick's no stranger to this, Will's definitely no stranger to this, but when you start telling people the hard truths, then the algorithms and the systems at place, they don't really give you the best opportunity to push your content to get out to the masses and the largest number of people possible. And so I knew that I'd be fighting an uphill battle perhaps by making music that felt authentic to my soul and not just selling out to make the kind of music that I thought the people would want to hear. And so around 2019, I started watching a lot of videos about different ways that people were making passive income through cryptocurrency, through different forms of investing, through short-term rentals. That was one of the ones that I saw. But what I came to the conclusion of is that there's a million different ways you can do this. And there's all kinds of people out there now who are teaching different ways that you can make passive income. And this is just the way I've done it. The Airbnb thing is just the way that I've done it. And I'm not trying to come on here and tell everybody, oh, you should go out and start an Airbnb property management short-term rentals business, because it's not for everyone. This is just what's worked for me, and I'll share a little bit about how I got that going in this video. But what I really wish to share is that the whole system is designed to make us think that we need to go through years and years and years and years of school, education, and then we need to graduate and get another degree, get ourselves into a bunch more debt so we can get another degree. And then eventually, when we have all of these credentials and we've spent all this money on our education, finally we might be ready to get a job. And what we see is that people put themselves into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, but they could have actually put that money into purchasing a house, a place to live. And instead they spend years of their life, getting themselves into debt to learn unuseful skills that don't actually generate passive income. They might be able to get you a decent job, but is it really worth it if you're having to put yourself into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to learn that skill? And is it really worth it to spend years and years of your life? So in my experience and from my perspective, there's a million different ways that you can just start going online and researching passive income models. Passive income is the idea that you can generate an income off of your past efforts. So rather than trading your time for money, an hourly wage, which is basically just trading an hour of your life for a certain amount of income, you're saying, hey, I'm going to put in some energy up front, and I'm going to put some sweat equity into something, and I'm going to invest my time into something that I'm not going to see an immediate payoff from, potentially. But then, if I'm successful, I will have income that is paid to me for years and years off of that past work. That's the concept of what I mean when I say passive income. And again, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but the way that I found was approaching people who were renting a property out. Maybe it was on Zillow, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and approaching them and saying, hey, what if instead of long-term renting this, we list it on Airbnb and other short-term rental platforms, and I will handle everything for you. I'll take care of all the booking, all of the management. I'll make sure that the place is professionally cleaned after every single guest. I'll make sure that any repair items are handled in a very timely fashion so that the property is always in tip-top shape. You can use it whenever it's not being rented. You have first pick of dates that you can block off on your calendar. And that's essentially the gist of it. And does this require no work? No, it absolutely requires work. But in around 3 months of me going out, cold calling, approaching property owners with this business plan, looking professional, showing up with confidence, I managed to land 8 listings, and I currently manage 7 listings. I lost a couple during COVID because of the intensity of it, but I managed to land 8 listings within my first few months of approaching property owners. And once you get them to agree, then it's about integrity. It's about following through with your word and doing what you say you're going to do. And you might not have all the skills that are required to do it right away, but if you put yourself into that situation, you're going to figure out how to do it. And there's a million coaches online. I learned from a guy named Brian Page, and I paid about $1,000 when I was almost broke for his course. And then I followed step by step his formula of how to do this. And there's other people who have done the same thing. But what I can tell you is that now, 6 years later, this was in 2019, it's almost 2025 now, almost 2026, I've been able to make an income for 6 years off of a business that really only took me about 3 months of working a few hours a day to set up. And now I have the freedom with my time. Yeah, I still have some responsibility. If anything goes wrong with the business, it falls back on me. I have a lot of personal responsibility for the business, and at times that can be a little bit stressful. But for the most part, my time, my schedule has been freed up so that I'm able to focus on things that are fulfilling to me and focus on what I feel like is my truer purpose in life, which is to share natural law, truth, freedom, love through my music. And so I guess what I'd like to say is just to encourage anybody else out there, if you've had an inclination that maybe working that job that you've been working is soul-sucking and it's depriving you of your energy, and it feels like you're in this dead end where you're just always trying to basically get ahead to pay the bills, and you're not able to really have the extra energy and the time to focus on what lights you up and what brings you joy and purpose, to build something that's really rewarding for you and something that hopefully can be of value and of reward to the rest of the world. What I'd like to say is just take a moment to calm your breath, calm your mind, and visualize what it would feel like if all of your needs were met and you could work for maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day on your business that you've set up in the past, and then the rest of the time you have available to you to actually focus on what really lights you up and what really brings you joy in this life. Just sit and think about that and feel that. Feel how fulfilling it would be to know that you don't have to go back to that job, you know, to go back to a soul-sucking situation that feels like, you know, you're kind of just working to get ahead, right? And what I want to say is it is possible. It's not easy. I'm not talking about necessarily a get-rich-quick scheme, but what I am talking about is something that almost anybody could do. Anybody could learn a high-value skill that can help others to generate passive income, help you to generate passive income, help bring value to others in the economy, in the free market, and by doing so, you can free up your time to be able to invest in yourself and be able to live your purpose and live your dreams. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but I am really grateful and I feel really blessed right now to be in a point in my life where, for example, Derrick brought Dub FX out to People's Reset, this People's Reset in the UK in Bath, and also the People's Reset in Morelia this past year. And Dub FX and I connected, and he liked my music, and he was like, hey man, why don't you come on tour with me in Europe? I'm going on a 32 show tour through Europe in this fall, and I'd love for you to join me. And he said, I'm not going to really be able to pay you because there's not really enough budget for that, but what I can do is I can cover your flights and your hotels, and if you're willing to show up and invest the time, then you can play for my entire audience. And if I was working a job where I had to be spending every hour of every day or 8 hours a day just trying to be able to pay the bills, I wouldn't have been able to say yes to this incredible opportunity. But I feel fortunate and blessed and grateful that because I had put in the time to create this passive income business, then I was able to say yes to an opportunity that, while it maybe wasn't a financially lucrative opportunity for me, at least right now, it was something that I had dreamt about doing, touring the world for many years. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I want to share in this video, is that if you feel like many people do, like you have something to offer to this world, like you have a gift that you want to share, and I'm sure you do if you're tuning into this, and you feel a little bit stuck, maybe it's financially stuck, or maybe you just feel stuck in terms of just showing up and doing that thing, because again, having time freedom isn't everything. Another thing is actually just having the dedication to show up every day for your craft, for your purpose, and what you're meant to do here on this earth. And to tie this in with the theme of agorism and parallel networks, you know, agorism and parallel networks, and as I understand it, I've done some research through Derrick's work and found out about Samuel Edward Konkin III, and he talks about the idea of counter-economics and the idea that in order to defeat the government or defeat statism, we can't just fight against it. We can't put other people in power expecting anything to change, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we can't be looking for a political solution to the issue. But if we create new systems that make the old systems obsolete, if we come here on this earth and do what we're really born to do, then we can change the world through our actions, through our mission, through our purpose. And tying it back to Dub FX, You know, Derrick, 33, also got to come on tour with us this summer. And every time you see Dub FX perform, he started out as a humble street artist, just busking in the streets. And after years and years of honing his craft, he started getting millions, tens of millions of views on these YouTube videos, and then started getting invited to major festivals all around the world. And now he's an internationally touring festival headliner. And his music, when you hear it, you can see the way that it uplifts and inspires so many people, and it makes such a difference in the world. And so, to me, that is agorism. It's doing something that's outside of the system, figuring out how you can offer value to the world in a way that doesn't need to force other people to your will, right? Because the whole thing about government is it requires force. It requires violation of other people's consent. It's like saying, oh, well, the 51% of people, we think it should be this way, so we're going to force the 49% in order to go with our will. And that's nothing more than mob rule. So if we really want to change things, the only way to do it is through creating a better world by offering something of value, offering our deepest medicine, our deepest creativity. And so I think I'm going to wrap this talk up here. Been going on for about 20 minutes. And yeah, I just want to thank Derrick again for having me on here. Big ups to Derrick, big up to Will Keller. Both of y'all, I'm really inspired by both of your work, and really looking forward to being in person at People's Reset this year. I'm going to be giving a talk about a lot of these themes of how I've been able to generate passive income to support me in bringing my gifts and bringing my deeper service to the world. And I'm also going to be going into more depth on sort of the inner creative battles and the inner shadow work that's required to clear the mind of incoherent thoughts so that our deepest message, our deepest resonance can come through us. And so that really, it's not ours, it's actually God's, it's the divine, can come through us and work through us in order to make the world a better place. When we heal, we have the opportunity to heal others. And so that's really my message of this video. I hope this was inspiring to y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in, and look forward to seeing everybody this year in Morelia, end of January at People's Reset. It's going to be an amazing event, and so grateful to be a part of it. Big ups to everybody involved. Take care, peace, purpose, presence. Blessings.
Yes, good stuff from Brother Presence. All right, so glad he was able to send that in to us. As I said, and as he said there, he is on tour right now, so he won't be here with us live just yet, but really glad to get him to share that. I'm excited for that because, again, we're talking Agorism Parallel Networks, and we're not sticking specifically to just Samuel Konkin's ideas that inspired us, inspired me. We're letting everybody interpret this in their own way. So Will is going to be speaking about natural law. Grant is going to be speaking about how to develop a passive income, which he sees as a way to then get towards building parallel systems and to really doing the life's work that you want, so you're not just stuck in a job you hate or a life that you don't enjoy. And I am the final speaker for today's microactivation, and I am going to be also interpreting this parallel networks in my own way. So my talk is going to be focused in January on how to build parallel systems relating to recovery. And for one, let me kind of start off by saying that I don't like that word recovery. Not just recovery in the general sense, but recovery as it is applied to addiction. Because it's a common phrase that you hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. And in my view, it tends to kind of imply that a person is always in this state of recovering and, they're never going to be better. It also sort of plays into the addiction as a disease model, which I completely reject. And so let me just say off the bat, so we don't upset anybody, that if AA has helped you, or NA or any of those, the 12-step programs have helped you, then awesome. I have friends who have benefited from them greatly, and I don't shame them because of that. We all heal in different ways. However, for myself, and I think many people, the 12-step program and the addiction as a disease model has been quite damaging and I think disempowering, because again, what is it? If you have a disease, that's something that you are going to live with. And, maybe there's a cure for that disease, but addicts, we tend to be told, well, once an addict, always an addict, right? And if you're an addict now, then you're going to be an addict when you're 50 years old, when you're whatever, however old it is. And I don't know. I don't agree with that. I was addicted to drugs at 20 years old. I'm now 40, going on 41 in a couple weeks, and I'm not the same person I was back then. And the idea that I will always be that person and that at a moment's notice I could slip into falling into addiction, or that I'm always in this stage of recovery, I just find that to be very disempowering and not beneficial for healing. So when I did go through my addiction, which I'll share briefly about, when I got addicted to drugs at 20 years old, so literally this weekend will be 20 years, and the 20-year anniversary of my arrest, November 16, 2005. I got out of high school, started drinking, started partying, and very quickly got sucked into drugs, including, ecstasy, Xanax, pills, and then eventually crystal meth. And from January 2005 to November 2005, in that time, I got hooked on crystal. I was homeless. I got pulled into a deep world of, just underworld of drugs and criminal activity, and eventually living in a crack and meth house. And I was actually able to get myself sober all on my own without having to go to any kind of place or anything like that. I do credit cannabis. Cannabis helped me quite a bit to deal with the anxiety and all the craziness I was dealing with from taking so many drugs, and not to mention that the drug use, of course, was just a symptom for deeper problems, as it tends to be, as most addictions tend to be. I was really just self-medicating for a lot of traumas that I had in my young life related to my birth father, lack of relationship there, and all kinds of different things I was dealing with. I'd been diagnosed as bipolar and all sorts of stuff that, again, I don't really buy into too much. But the point is, I was not in a very stable state of mind, and drugs was the way that I was dealing with this and processing this. And I thought that was the path to happiness for quite a while. And eventually, though, when I ended up in that crack and meth house, I was able to get myself sober. I knew that I wasn't happy and that this was not the path that I was destined to be. And I started smoking cannabis every day for, I think it was 7 days, maybe 8 days. And by the end of that week, I was sober enough off the other hard drugs to get in my car and leave this crazy house. My car had been outside the entire time. I just didn't really have the strength to leave, because in many ways I had kind of damaged some relationships I had. I had burned some bridges, as we tend to do when we're in these states of mind. And I just didn't have anywhere to go, or at least I didn't think I had anywhere to go. So after getting sober off cannabis, I was able to pick myself up and just go back to my parents and say, please let me come home. And so I got myself sober, and that was probably one of the greatest accomplishments I've ever achieved off crystal meth, especially because I can count on both hands the number of people I know who've died of drug overdoses at that time and since that time when I was addicted over the last 20 years. And unfortunately, I wasn't completely out of that lifestyle. While I was able to get myself off the drugs, I was still in the drug dealing and kind of that whole world. And eventually, as I said, November 16, 2005, I got arrested and I got sentenced to felony probation. And between November 2005 and October 2008, I did 19 months in Texas state prisons, jails and prisons facilities. I did a year. I got out for 5 months, did 3 more months, was out for a year, did 4 more months, and then I did 8 months on parole. And so I've had quite a bit of experience in these different facilities and jails and so-called rehabs and these types of different facilities. And then after I got out and I was on probation, I was forced through the law to go to AA meetings twice a week and aftercare meetings. I mean, I've done the whole gamut of all those different types of things. And again, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. That's all I can really do. I did not find much value in these things. Many people, if you've ever been to an AA meeting, again, this is not like an attack on anybody and the things that work for them, but the AA meetings I went to were filled with, I'm 20 years old, 21, 22, 23 at the time when I'm going to these meetings, and it's filled with people in their 50s and 60s or older who are lifelong alcoholics, who are smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee all day, and just kind of commiserating in their misery is what it felt like to me. There wasn't any joy in these rooms. Like when I'd go into these places for these meetings, it just felt so heavy. so dark. I don't know how else to describe it, but it wasn't the path for me, let's just say that. And so now that it's the 20th anniversary of my arrest, and I am actually about to release a new book, my memoir, about this time in my life and how I overcame all this stuff. In fact, I think my editor, known as Truth Editor, I think she might be here on this call. So shout out to you if you are here. Thank you for all your help. My book is called A Man of My Word, How I Overcame Addiction, Depression, and Mental and Physical Prisons. And it will be out by Christmas time, definitely be out by the People's Reset, and I'll have some copies in person. And in the book, it's more of my personal story of the different traumas and the things that I went through. And I will just say this, I don't have the perfect, like, here's the 5 steps to do if somebody's addicted and you're going to solve all their problems. That doesn't exist. People have tried. 12-step works for some people. Sometimes locking people in prison might work for them, although it's not really a rehabilitation facility. But there is no perfect model that's going to apply for everybody. What I've learned, having grown up in a drug addict family, my father was addicted to drugs, was in and out of prison through my entire early life, and he eventually, unfortunately, died of a drug overdose in 2018. I had friends die of drug overdoses, very close friends, 2013, 2020, and I've been around this quite a bit, and alcoholic uncles that I grew up being around. I know what this life is like, and I know what it does to a family, what it does to an individual. And I know how difficult it can be. Ultimately, those individuals have to make the choices to change their lives. There's nothing that you or I can do. You can give them as much money as you want. You can give them as much care and concern and cry and yell and scold and do all those things. At the end of the day, if somebody doesn't want to change, if they don't value their own life enough to change their ways, to get out of addiction and prison and all those cycles, then it won't happen. That's just the cold, hard truth of it. It has to come from within them, and none of the pleading that we do on our end is ultimately going to do the trick. That doesn't mean we should give up on them. I definitely don't encourage you to give up on the people in your lives who might be struggling. And of course, I'm speaking about drug addiction. But what I've realized over the years is that as I've done a lot of presentations around the world, I've gone to Costa Rica, UK, Denmark, all across the US, and of course, Mexico, sharing this story. And every time I do, somebody from our broader freedom community will come up to me and say, Derrick, my son is currently addicted to drugs, or my daughter's going through this, or I've never been addicted to drugs, but this is the way I've struggled. I have a gambling addiction, or I overeat whenever I'm stressed out. We've all got our different quirks and idiosyncrasies and stuff. So maybe drugs is not something that you relate to, but whatever your particular path, or maybe people in your life's path, ultimately, I think we need to create new systems to help these people, because while AA might and the 12-step program might have some beneficial things, like I do think it's helpful to make amends with people you've wronged if the opportunity presents itself. There's also a need for self-forgiveness. I think that those systems ultimately are dead ends, because as I said at the beginning, teaching people that they're an addict and once an addict, always an addict, or that you have a disease and there's no way to get around this. I don't see that as empowering. I don't see that as helping. And I think we need parallel systems. I think we need alternative systems, especially because, as I said, I think this conversation is actually probably more prevalent than we realize. One of the things that I've seen, just as a funny example, whenever I tell people, yeah, I was addicted to crystal meth, I mean, I just say it like that, as casually as I do in this call as any other time. It doesn't faze me. I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm not ashamed. And it's funny because when I share this, I'll see the look on other people's face, like, ooh, oh my God, crystal meth. Wow, like as if I should be kind of quietly talking about this so that we don't, embarrass anybody, or because that's the way that society has been for so long, that, if you have a drug addict or somebody, a problem child in the family, you hide them away, you ship them off and go get them to rehab, and then you bring them back, and then hopefully they're better and nobody ever has to know. We talk about these things in hushed tones as if, we should be ashamed. And I get it, because there is a lot of shame. It's hard for people, especially I think as men, but maybe for all people, to say, yeah, I have this problem right now and I'm not in control. It's a hard thing for us as human beings to say, I'm not in control. I wish I was, but I don't know how to stop drinking, or I don't know how to stop smoking, or I don't know how to stop taking these pills, or I can't stop, looking at porn. That's another big addiction, right? Whatever it may be, that's a very difficult thing and a humbling thing for somebody to say. But that's part of the problem, is if we keep talking about this in whispers and hushed tones and we don't actually get to the point where we can be open and free to be real with each other, then the cycle is going to continue, my friends. So my goal by sharing this new book and sharing my story is not to say I have the one path towards fixing yourself, but just to share everything I've went through. And for me, I had to go to prison. And then prison, I discovered meditation, I discovered prayer, I started doing a lot of journaling, I started doing a lot of healing of my own trauma. And ultimately, that's what I think it comes down to, is that we got to get to the root causes of our pain. So I don't want to share too much more because I'm still developing the ideas, and I do want to, get you guys excited for the People's Reset. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on for Agorism and Parallel Networks, is how can we hold space for those who are healing from addiction or in the midst of addiction of any kind without reinforcing those same systems. Because just one more example I'll give. When I got arrested and I went to prison and I got out and I was on probation and parole, they expect you to have a job, right? You have to either be in school full-time or you have to have a full-time job. And they're definitely not open to you saying, oh yeah, well I'm an activist, or I'm living this alternative lifestyle. No, the probation, the parole system reinforces that you have to be in that mainstream world. They want you to have a taxable income. They want you to be able to show them your check stubs. So fundamentally, that whole thing is all about corralling people back into the mainstream system, which we know is problematic. Now, if I was to start telling my probation officer or my parole officer, well, sorry, ma'am, but I'm not going to do that because the government's corrupt and this and that, well, they would just think I'm crazy and I probably think I'm on drugs again and send me back to prison, right? So the more we can help people and keep them from getting locked up or keep them from getting back into the cycle of these different systems, then I think it's another way to help break people out of the mainstream paradigms and the mainstream ways of thinking and towards their own healing, towards their own growth, towards pursuing what fulfills them and makes them happy, and then ultimately to helping them wake up in the broader sense, right? So that's kind of the ideas that I'm working with, guys, and I look forward to sharing more about that with you. And if you are interested in my book, again, my book is called A Man of My Word, How I Overcame Addiction, Depression, and Mental and Physical Prisons. You can follow me, of course, at theconsciousresistance.com. If you're on my email list, I'm going to be sending out some updates very soon. The book is finished. It's written. Everything's edited and ready to go. We're working on a book cover and the formatting now, and I'm so excited to share it with you guys very, very soon. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to questions. I don't have any questions over here in the Q&A chat. That's fine. The chat's been moving not too quick. This is the time to ask questions. Also, I want to let you guys know we do have a 10% discount for everybody here. It's good until, what's today, Wednesday? So as of Saturday morning, it'll expire. So if you want to use the code when you go to buy your tickets at thepeoplesreset.com, Natural Law 26. So Natural Law, so there'll be two L's there, Natural Law, all one word, 26. When you go to checkout, it'll ask you if you have a coupon code, use that one, Natural Law 26, and you'll get 10% discount off the tickets, which are currently $222. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to go up at the end of this month for the final price of $288. So that is exclusively to everybody who's tuned in here on Crowdcast and those who are watching on Odyssey. Thank you guys for being here with us today. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to go ahead and bring back Brother Will for just a couple moments and get his thoughts on a thing or two. Let me pop you back over here. Jason G says, will you be speaking anywhere in the Midwest? Jason, stay tuned. We're thinking of a 2026 tour, so stay tuned for that. We'll see what we have coming up. So how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I really resonate with your new book. My whole journey to higher awareness started from addiction, conquering addiction. And that just, that was a catalyst into psychology, the occult, esoterica, what's really going on in the world. So that resonates with me. And I talk about it openly as well. I totally agree with you on how, we're keeping it hush hush. And it's something that shame is extremely potent for people. And that's something that we need to overcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, man. And yeah, I mean, I think to me, it all ties together, right? Like the healing process, the unlearning process, the relearning process. Well, I even think for myself, I'll speak for myself, and I think maybe it applies to other people, that some of us get into drug and alcohol addiction because maybe on a deeper spiritual, psycho-spiritual level, we understand that the world doesn't make any sense, and we start trying to make sense of it by taking drugs or drinking too much, right? And because I even look back at the ways that I got into a lot of trouble in school. Like I was getting arrested, I was getting in fights, and part of it was related to the stuff going on at home that I just didn't know how to navigate all the emotions I was dealing with. But I also think fundamentally when I was going through, I was in advanced classes, I was doing all that stuff. I was a smart kid, but I was still like getting in a lot of trouble. And my teachers would even tell my mom, like, he's too smart for his own good. You know, he gets bored and then he starts acting out. I think on a deeper level, I understood that the school system was a system of programming and that I rejected it. Even if I didn't have all the words to kind of say that there was that going on. And again, I think that my eventual using of drugs as a way to kind of understand things was a coping mechanism, you know. So I think that happens a lot more than people realize. We got this comment here from Josie. I'm going to go ahead and pop it on the screen. It would be cool to have intentional communities who have spots for people who want to heal from addiction, where they just get love and support and a complete change of scenery. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good idea. It's kind of like the idea with some of these more retreat type addiction centers, where the idea is get somebody out of their surroundings and give them a place to dry out and kind of, you know, get over their addiction phase, and then see where they go from there. It is also, I will say, just to be frank and honest about it, it is a huge undertaking to deal with an addict, you know, and that's a big job for somebody to take on. And I have respect for people who try to deal with these things. We got another question here from Jason here. Maybe, Will, you have any understanding of this? Do you ever utilize things like EFT to help with addiction, or ever even heard of it? I'm familiar in terms of hearing about it, but I never practiced. Will, what do you know about EFT? I think it's the tapping thing, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, tapping on certain meridians. I'm not too familiar with it, but I have heard good things about that. I mean, tapping and cupping and patting is good for the body, for the fascia, and to kind of get the stagnant energy going throughout the body. So yeah, that's a healing modality, but I'm not familiar on how that kind of works with addiction. So.
Okay. We do got a question over here, and I'll pose it to you. You got any insights? Feel free to share them. It says, do you have any practices or insights on weaving meditation into the fabric of community building, not just as a personal tool, but as a way to harmonize group energy and to attract the right people into our world? It's a great big question. I'll just share a couple thoughts on there. So bringing meditation into community building to harmonize group energy. Well, I mean, I think part of the answer is right there in your question, is meditating as a community, whether that means eco-village, intentional community on the land, or just your local community, or even your online community. You know, I'm a part of a network of people who host weekly meditations online, just to sort of tune in and kind of bring that energy. And they might take turns having different meditation teachers. I know Miriam did some Freedom Cell meditations a couple years ago, where she was featuring different types of meditation teachers, just to bring that to the broader Freedom Cells community. And I do think that you're correct that if that's something that interests you and you bring that and make that front and center of your work or your community, you're going to attract other people who are interested in that as well. I do think it's important. And in the community we're building, which is called the Conscious Agora, one of our pillars, we have three main pillars. The first one would be individual liberty, you know, natural law, sovereignty of the individual, stuff like that, and then permaculture and the way we build our systems, food systems, homes, etc. But the other one is what we just generally call mindfulness. And this doesn't mean that we have a must meditate 10 hours a week type of, you know, kind of quota, but just generally speaking, that we're trying to work with people who are promoting mindfulness and that are not static and that are have emotional intelligence and emotional maturity and are wanting to continue to grow as people, as spiritual people, etc. So I do think that's important. Will, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I agree with you. Meditation's a powerful tool, especially with all the noise in the world today. I think it's one of a few tools, right? And it should be incorporated into, you know, community building. I think that's vital. And also, you know, concentration and focus is something on the other spectrum that some people might need, right? I mean, meditation for me is gardening in the soil, right? Barefooted, ass in the soil, and I'm in this balancing, grounding, meditative state. So there's many different practices, but even focusing, concentration are other practices as well. And all of that is all about balancing and bringing it to the middle. I think it's critical. It's crucial.
Awesome. Great stuff. So I'll read a couple comments here, guys. One more time, I want to remind you guys that if you want to get the 10% discount code, it's Natural Law 26 when you're checking out at the peoplesreset.com. .org. From Margarita, she says, the same is needed to be done for people with mental health issues. Mental institutions are even worse than prisons. They abuse vulnerable and voiceless people and turn them into chronically sick people. People become cash cows for corrupt institutions. I agree. And as I was kind of sharing earlier with a little bit of my story, there's definitely an overlap between what is often termed mental health issues, and of course that's a whole nother conversation, and drug addiction. I had been told at different points that I was bipolar. I do think at some points I probably was dealing with what they call borderline personality disorder, and my way of dealing with that was drugs. Now, that doesn't mean that I think those diagnoses should, just like with addict, should define a person for the rest of their lives. And I'm not a fan of saying, okay, well, then that means you need to take X, Y, Z and dope yourself up on all these big pharma medicines. I think most people here would probably have concerns about that. And I had, in fact, when I actually did try at one point to go get help, and I went to a doctor and I was like, okay, well, I'm tired of dealing with all these mental and physical health issues I was dealing with. So I went to a doctor and tried to talk to them, and they literally within 5 minutes handed me boxes of Lexapro, which was the very popular antidepressant at the time. And I swear to God, there must have been a big pharma rep in the room next door, because I met this doctor for all of 5 minutes, and they're like, you know what your problem is? You're stressed out, and hold on, I got the solution. And they came back and just gave me all these free samples of Lexapro. I was so kind of turned off by the whole experience. I never took any of it. I just threw it away and was like, never mind, I'll just deal with this myself. But my point here is that that's what's available when you start seeking help in those mainstream systems, which is, again, why we're focused on building parallel systems. And I definitely think many people who end up dealing with drug addiction have underlying traumas and underlying mental issues. Again, not to say like the DSM that they've got some issue that should be dealt with by pharmaceuticals, but that without addressing those underlying root causes, eventually they might manifest as drug and alcohol addiction. Any thoughts on that, Will?
That's right. No, I agree with all of that. Jesse even said in the comments, it's a lot about one's energy attention. And I think that's crucial to know the internal ecology of ourselves, the psychic energy that is always flowing, because really anyone's susceptible to any form of addiction, right? This is escapism. It can be, any kind of problem that becomes rooted in the mind and in one's life. You can form some type of addiction, right? You could be watching TV all day and not kind of handling personal responsibility. There's an addiction there. So it's in a form of escapism. Having these holistic tools available, especially in parallel communities, is crucial for health and longevity.
Awesome. I love it, guys. And for those who are curious more about specifically on the health topic, remember that day one of the People's Reset is Liberate Your Mind, Body, and Soul. So they're going to have a whole bunch of speakers talking about all sorts of health related things as they interpret it. As we wrap up here, guys, I just want to remind you again that if you are coming with families, with kids, or you're considering coming, please go to the peoplesreset.org and check out our Freedom Families tab. Fill out the form if you can. Let us know what the ages of your children are, what their interests are, so we can try to curate programming that will be the best for the families that are going to be attending. We're really trying to put some effort into that, and we would appreciate your insight on that. Even if you don't have a family, but you'd like to volunteer in some way and help out with that effort, please do fill out that form. And again, the code to get the 10% discount, Natural Law 26. Anything else, Will, before we check out?
I'm just going to say again, I'm thrilled for the People's Reset, and it's an honor to present, and I'm looking forward to mingling and connecting with everyone. So thanks, Derrick. I appreciate you.
Awesome, man. This has been a great call, everybody. I'll answer this last question before we sign off. How do you see breathwork and/or entheogens, intentional plant medicine, as a healing modality which can help folks become unstuck and facilitate healing to assist in cultivating a meaningful life? I absolutely am a supporter of plant medicine and things like breathwork. I do think that just like anything else, some people can become over-reliant on those, and you see people who are kind of in this, what is sometimes called spiritual bypassing, where it's like, okay, well, I just got to get my ayahuasca every 6 months and then I'm okay. And they become almost dependent on that. And then they use that as a way as counterintuitive as it seems, they use that as a way to avoid actually doing that deeper work. So I think that plant medicines and all those can be very useful, but ultimately, those are just tools. I used psychedelics for a long time and have a lot of respect and got a lot of benefits out of that. But ultimately, what the medicines told me is, you don't need me anymore. You can do this on your own. And so I think that's where it really has to come down to, is we can use these external tools to help us in our healing processes, but ultimately, we're the ones who have to take charge of our lives. So, all right, guys, we're going to leave it there for today. We're going to close out with a music video from Brother Presence, so you guys can get excited about hearing him. We're going to have 2 huge concerts featuring Dub FX, Natalie Rise, Presence, myself, and so many other artists. So whether you're coming for the family activities, for the talks and the deep philosophy, for the community, the connection, the workshops, or the music, there's going to be so many great things going on. I hope to see you in Morelia in January. It's coming up very soon, my friends, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for microactivation number 4, focused on empowering technology. We're going to talk about privacy tech, open source tech, and so much more. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Grant. And we'll see you guys next time.
Moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to head first. We facing our reality. Once a dream created actuality, and we will not go quietly. The crystal temple body in vitality, awareness of our actions in morality, acceptance of this earthly realm duality, appreciating nature in her majesty, freedom of our mind, and then we know
I see the truth inside my mind, that what we do to realign our soul and mind are one with I, breathing in the field of time. So bloom like the flowers of the earth, it's time to bloom. Take our power back from curse, it's time to bloom. Open up the petals of creation, no more chasing, no more wasting. Life is sacred, so take a minute and let it sink in. Just for living, you know that you love. Careful what's given and sent from above, to let our spirit descend to the body. We lift up our sin like a dove, no regret in the soul is made perfect. Even our worst sins can be reversed, and love is the birth. We don't need a church, infinite mother, she live in the earth. Awaken the dream and live in the seasons. Let your vibration be what you believe, and lit like a beacon, we giving them freedom, and we live in the garden of Eden.
Head first, we facing our reality. Once a dream created actuality, and we will not go quietly. The crystal temple body in vitality, awareness of our actions in morality, acceptance of this earthly realm duality, appreciating nature in her majesty, freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to learn from our mistakes. We moving forward, power versus force. The map is in the head, but in the heart's a compass, my true north. Singing this song to resonate my throat and cast a spell for growth. Unite in the heads and hearts of those who seek the passion and the flow. We moving consciously, and then we know it's time to bloom in this your life, and know that no one is coming to save you. I realize that only I hold keys to my own cage, and likewise you're the only one to make sure that you're not a slave. We moving consciously, my people, wake up, shape up, moving the body and mana and pranayama. Stay hydrated and shake the snakes and parasites from in the gut, and only then you'll have the juice to take the ones outside of you. And then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to freedom of our mind, and then we know it's time to moving consciously, and then we know it's time to once a dream created actuality, moving consciously, and then we know it's time to blue. Moving consciously, and then we know it's time to blue. Moving consciously, and then we know it's time to blue. Freedom of our mind, and then we know